So all nerves have a cell body. That cell body has a cell membrane. It's got organelles floating around it. And it also has a nucleus. And what does the nucleus contain? And what does DNA code for? Proteins, right? This is going way back. Class number onesie. Are you with me? If a cell has a nucleus that contains DNA, can that cell divide? Can neurons divide?
Yes.
Say no. Why? They're locked in what's called the G0 phase of the cell cycle. They're incapable of dividing. Watch. If you know someone who's had a brain injury, right? Does that part of the brain regenerate itself? No. What happens is the brain will actually use different parts, healthy parts of the brain, to take over that function. Tell me you got that. If somebody damages and destroys nerves in their spinal cord, right, that causes them to be a paraplegic, do one day they get up and start walking around and maybe popping a lock? No. The reason is because neurons themselves are incapable of dividing. Say yes. Especially in the central nervous system. So any damage to any neurons, you're going to suffer the consequences for. So can you get brain or spinal cord cancer?
No, it's the other stuff you get the cancer from.
That's right, because inside your nervous system, there are other cells other than neurons. So there are supporting cells within the brain and spinal cord that are capable of dividing. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But let me just go over the basic structure of a neuron, right? So watch. And it's real simple. And I'm going to try and simplify it. As you can see, there's these little extensions of the cell body. That's right. And these dendrites collect neural information. You got me? Then, extending off the cell body is this axon. And the axon is capable of communicating with many different types of cells or different types of neurons. So in the simplest form, axons transmit neural information. Dendrites collect it, axons transmit it. And in order for the axon to transmit its neural information, it has to generate an electrical impulse. And how is that electrical impulse generated?
Electrolytes.
Right, through the movement of electrolytes into and out of the axon. Say yes. Who's with me? That's good. And dendrites collect the neural information. So you better write this down. So on the membrane, the cell membrane of these dendrites, you have these little things called neurotransmitter receptors. So what binds the neurotransmitter? The dendrite, right? What transmits and causes the release of the neurotransmitter? Right, the axon. So watch. Axons transmit neural information. Dendrites collect neural information. Are you with me? So I'm going to simplify this for you, and then we're going to get a little more into it. So watch. Now get this. The proteins that neurons make in addition to all the other proteins that they make, the big ones that they make are these polypeptide chains called neurotransmitters. So the neurotransmitters are actually made in the cell body. They're packaged in a little secretory vesicle. Yeah. And those little neurotransmitters travel through the cytoplasm of the axon. And they get stored at the end of the axon. Who's with me? So again, I'm going to simplify it, and then I'm going to get a little more detailing. So watch. I need to make that a little better. Okay, watch. Let's label some stuff here. Here's an axon. You with me? This is the axon knob. What's stored in the axon knob? The neurotransmitter. And based on the type of nerve it is, that will determine what neurotransmitter is stored in the end. Who's with me? Now, axons do not touch cells of the body, and they don't touch other neurons. They form a what? A synapse. So a synapse is where an axon and a dendrite, or an axon and a cell of the body meet. They don't touch each other. You got me? So embedded in the cell membrane, and we're going to say this is a dendrite. What's embedded in the cell membrane of the dendrite? The neurotransmitter receptor. Now, how nerves specify whether they're going to communicate with a specific nerve is based on the neurotransmitter that's released. And whatever neurotransmitter this is, there has to be a specific receptor that it has to bind to. If it doesn't have that receptor, that neurotransmitter here, when it's released, if you don't have that receptor on that dendrite, that neuron cannot communicate with it. Tell me you got that. So, I'm simplifying. You have the axon that will develop an electrical impulse, and it will travel over the axon knob. That electrical impulse produced by electrolytes causes the release of a neurotransmitter. Who's with me? That neurotransmitter then will float between the axon knob and the dendrite. And that little neurotransmitter has to bind to a specific receptor. Who's got me? And there are two types of neurotransmitters. I spelled it. I think I spelled that right. Excitatory? Did I spell that right? You know how to spell it. The neurotransmitter that's released when it binds to that neurotransmitter receptor on a dendrite in this case, it's going to do one of two things. it's either going to cause that dendrite to begin to develop an electrical impulse, or it's going to prevent that dendrite from developing an electrical impulse. So just like computers, just exactly like computers, it's based on ones and zeros. It either is on or it's off. So when this axon releases that neurotransmitter and it binds to that receptor, it's either going to cause that neuron, right, the next neuron, to either fire an electrical impulse or inhibit the firing of that electrical impulse. So it's either on or off. Say yes. You got me? Okay. Now, watch. Let's say, for example, that this axon releases a neurotransmitter and it causes this dendrite to produce an electrical impulse. The neurotransmitter that bound there is excitatory. As long as that neurotransmitter is bound there, that dendrite is going to continue to produce an electrical impulse. Do you want that dendrite continually producing an electrical impulse? No. So you have to have a way to get that neurotransmitter removed. And how do you do it? How do you remove that? No, how do you remove that neurotransmitter?
Oh,
Watch. This is where nursing students, they end up going into horticulture.
It's a Pac-Man.
Watch. Because they don't understand pharmacology and mechanisms of action. Now watch. There's a little enzyme that floats in its space. It's called monoamine oxidase. Monoamine oxidase is an enzyme that removes that neurotransmitter.
From firing again?
Right. Once that neurotransmitter is removed, the electrical impulse stops. As long as that neurotransmitter is bound there, that electrical impulse will continue. You got me? So one of the ways that you remove it is through an enzyme called monoamine oxidase. The second way that you remove it is it's actually, that neurotransmitter is actually brought back up into what? The presynaptic membrane. That's called the process of reuptake.
What is it?
It's reuptake. So the neurotransmitter is actually reuptaked.
What does that mean?
Like sucked back up?
It's brought back up. Then it's degraded, right? And then it's rebuilt in the cell body.
So it goes back to the knob and gets...
It's in the knob, gets degraded, then the amino acids are used to rebuild it. Are you with me?
And rebuilt by amino acids.
The third way is that neurotransmitter never binds to that any of these receptors, and it just floats away and then is degraded by the cells of the body. You got me? All right.
Is the enzyme always just hanging out up there?
Yep. Okay. Some of the neurotransmitters you should be familiar with. Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine has many functions. Number one, it is the only neurotransmitter involved in skeletal muscle contraction. It is also involved in the parasympathetic nervous system. It's also involved in mood. All right, now watch. If an axon releases acetylcholine, what type of nerve fiber is it? You're right, but you butchered that one. Any nerve that releases acetylcholine is referred to as a cholinergic. Cholinergic nerve. You got me? Now, another neurotransmitter you should know is norepinephrine. And any nerve that releases norepinephrine is called what? It's called adrenergic. Now the little quiz trying to help you, right? So if norepinephrine is released, you got me? And it stimulates a cell to do something, right? It's called a what? Agonist. That's very good. So remember, you have agonists. Right, so you remembered that, like you probably went into the bathroom there. Okay, agonist, that stimulates, right? And see, now it's coming back to haunt you. Agonist stimulates, and then what's the opposite of an agonist? An antagonist. And an antagonist what does what? It blocks. So here we go. Let's see if you can put this one together. Norepinephrine is referred to as a what?
Adrenergic agonist.
It's referred to as an adrenergic agonist, and specifically a beta adrenergic agonist. Because what does norepinephrine and epinephrine bind to? Beta receptor. Ooh. Them two boys. Say yes. Okay. Wait, we're not done. Serotonin. Serotonin is involved in the special senses. Taste, sight, right? And serotonin is also involved in pain and pleasure. Oh, you get an get an amen there, huh? Yeah, amen. Whee! Them Duke boys. You got me? So watch. One of the things that cocaine does is it stimulates the production of serotonin in the thalamus and the limbic system, the emotional part of the brain. That's why anyone who says they don't like cocaine, they're lying to you. Because you can't help but not like it. Because it makes you feel good. And who doesn't want to feel good? You guys been doing that, huh?
Not even on the weekend.
Not on the weekend?
Just a weekend.
Yeah, you're reading a book.
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay. How many people follow this? All right. I'm going to give you a real quick dime version explanation of a couple of neurologic problems. Yep. It'll take 5 minutes. You got me? Okay. Watch. Did we talk about bipolar?
Can we? What? I would like to know,
About being bipolar?
how do you counteract it? How do you live with it?
Different drugs.
What
I'll explain that. Watch. What are the two big hormones? Well, I take that back. Neurotransmitters involved in mood.
Acetylcholine.
Norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and serotonin. Tell me you got that. Huh? They're all involved in mood. Serotonin and norepinephrine. Norepinephrine's involved in mood. Serotonin, heavily involved in mood. Okay, now watch. What happens to your muscles if you don't use it? They wither away. So what can happen is if something happens in your life that is kind of a life-altering moment, something that may be considered sad or depressing, right? You lose your job or you don't read the textbook. Say yeah. What can happen is people say, I have a chemical imbalance. What they're talking about is they don't produce and release enough neurotransmitter. Now, I'm not going to get all metaphysical on you, but thoughts are things. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? So if there is a situation where your thoughts and situations in your life that are very depressing, it can actually alter your brain chemistry where you simply can't pull yourself out of it. You know, back when I was a kid, it was snap out of it, right? Now it's they're giving you drugs. So watch, serotonin and norepinephrine, lack of that will produce depression. Who's with me? Now watch. If you're a depressed person and you don't release enough serotonin or norepinephrine, you don't, that axon, that nerve just doesn't produce enough of it. Do you want that neuron or that neurotransmitter being eaten by monoamine oxidase? No. So back in the 60s, they came up with a drug called Nardil. Yeah? And it inhibited that enzyme. The problem was it gave you all kinds of weird side effects. Like people would start twitching and smacking their lips and stuff. So then they got depressed because of that. So this is rarely used. But in the 70s and 80s, they came up with a drug that prevents the reuptake of that neurotransmitter and its degradation. So if you don't remove it from the neurotransmitter, or the neurotransmitter receptor, you don't remove that neurotransmitter, it will stimulate that nerve. Say yes. Mm-hmm. So drugs out there are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Have you heard of these? Paxil, Prozac, Effexor, you've heard of these? What they do is they prevent that neurotransmitter from being brought back up. And if it stays on that receptor, neurotransmitter receptor, it's going to stimulate that nerve.
Which is good.
Right. So if it stimulates it, then you're not going to be depressed. So that's how these drugs work in terms of treating depression.
So does it ever come off from now?
Yes. I mean, you don't block all the process of reuptake. And what
So
they'll do...
you just like be super happy.
Absolutely.
Juiced up all the time?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely. So in people who are bipolar, right? Watch. Most of you, hoping, are pretty even keeled, meaning that your mood is pretty much the same every day, right? It's not like you're catatonic and you don't get out of bed for a week, and then the next time, the next week you're up and like, okay, here, let's go dig a ditch.
I don't know these things.
But there are some people out there who have that. So basically what's going on is they don't have the ability to regulate the distribution and release of that neurotransmitter that's affecting mood. So what they do in their manic phase, when they're, right, they actually release a ton of neurotransmitter, and then that you get what's called fatigue at the synapse. You simply can't make any more. Tell me you got. So if you don't have that neurotransmitter, what do? Boom. You go catatonic. You sleep for a week, right? You don't get out of your bed, just to tinkle. Do you follow that? So there's a drug out there called lithium. And what lithium does is it stabilizes that axon membrane and slows down the release of neurotransmitter. So that's why people who are bipolar are prescribed lithium. Tell me you got that. The problem with lithium is the toxic dose and the therapeutic dose are very, very close. And if you get lithium toxicity, you die. That's why these people have to be monitored very, very closely. And here's the thing. Look, you should write this down. Life has its ups and downs. Look what I learned. But what I found out is that a lot of people simply don't want to feel anything. They just want to go through life like, you know what I mean? So these drugs can do that to you. So, I don't know. To me, I've seen changes in people, though, who have had these medications. I work with this lady, and there's no other way to describe this woman. She was a bitch. And when she first started working there, right, I would walk past her desk, and she'd be like, and I didn't even know the lady, right? So she worked there for like 3 years, right? And then I walked past her desk, and she's like, "Hi, Tim. How's it going?" I'm like, "Okay, Ann. How are you?" So, you know, being me, I had to ask. I go, "I got to ask you." She goes, "Yeah, I know what you're going to ask." And she was the one who admitted it, so I'm not calling her name. She goes, "I was a bitch. And I couldn't get along with anybody, and I was just always depressed and always thinking bad thoughts. And then I started on Prozac, and it changed my life. And that was a transformation I could not believe. I mean, this lady was engaging. She was funny. I'm like, I can't believe this. Then she would go, "I don't want to be hooked on this stuff." So I knew when she was trying to go off of it. Because she wouldn't talk to me. She'd just like, give me that stink eye. And I'm like, "Are you trying to go off?" "Well, yeah." And I'm like, "Go back on it. Trust me." But never did I see quite a transformation. And here's the thing. Like, if there's something out there that can help you live a better life, what's wrong with that? Do you understand? Your goal and my goal is the same goal. It is to be happy and content. And if you can get that through a pharmaceutical, I say God bless you. Yeah?
Or weed.
Is there, so the drugs that you're talking about, it could never like rebuild her chemical imbalance back to being normal?
No, but what it does is just kind of regulates it. So that's why they're able to, that's why lithium works. You know, but watch. There is very limited success with treating and curing mental illness. There's not a lot they can do. You have to simply treat the symptoms the best they can. Back in the 50s, before they had these drugs, they would use electroconvulsive therapy. They would shock them, like on the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They still do that today, believe it or not. But with these drugs now, people are able to live better lives. And for a lot of people, you know, because life is so complicated, right? Look, you get a text, okay, you got to be here, right? It's like, life is so fast-paced, but you know the human being hasn't changed much, and mentally you haven't like gotten to that point where you can handle all these inputs and technology. So, if you can get something that makes you feel better, what is wrong with that? And people say, "Oh, I don't want to get hooked on that," and then guys think they're weak, right? You know, snap out of it. You know, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. But I say, and you wouldn't believe the people that are on these drugs. I mean, I was surprised. I'm like, really? Because these people you talk to them, they got it. Looked like they got it all together. They have it least together. So that's all I'm saying.
So it's really not that bad for you, I mean, unless
Well, look, these drugs have been around for 25, 30 years. So you don't know the long-term effects. But here's my point.
That's a good
My
25
point,
or 30 years.
Right.
It's
right? So
better
if you're
than
happy for
miserable.
25 or 30 years, right,
Take that.
and then you die, or you're miserable your entire life, what are you gonna do?
I'll take the happy.
There you go, right? And that's hard. It is. Say yes. You followed that. So that's a real brief explanation of how neurons communicate with one another. Say yes. Okay, here we go. Watch. I'm going to help you out because I like you guys, as far as you know. Anything I should hit here? No? Too late. What the? Okay. What? Where is it? Put your wine in. It's almost over. Like you got 3 classes. You can do anything for 3 classes. Right? Put up with me. I'm going to explain to you now number 14. You got, this is number 14.
All right. Yay.
Number 14 at 11:30.
37.
Okay, watch.
Maybe.
That's Roman numeral 14 for you people who still write in Roman numerals.
We all? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Okay, you ready? That's your brain. Got me? There is an area of your brain in it's actually in the frontal lobe that is called the primary motor cortex. The primary motor cortex is what initiates movement. Am I doing this right? Yep. So if you get Dane Bramage in this area, right, you will have a difficult time initiating movement. You follow? There's a part of your brain called the cerebellum. Cerebellum means little brain, right? You got a big brain and you got a little brain. The cerebellum is involved in refining and coordinating movement. And the primary motor cortex communicates with the cerebellum, and the cerebellum communicates with the primary cortex. And the neurotransmitter that's involved in that is a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine is produced by specialized cells in the brain called the substantia. Hang on, is this still working? Okay. Niagara. Nigre. Under a microscope, the cells look dark, and the substantia nigra produce the neurotransmitter dopamine. And dopamine communicates, is a neurotransmitter that is involved in, what the hell is going on? Communicating with the cerebellum communicating with the primary motor cortex. And that neurotransmitter allows you to have refined, coordinated, fluid skeletal muscle movement. If the substantia nigra is damaged and you don't produce dopamine, you get a condition called Parkinson's. So Parkinson's is the lack of dopamine, and therefore the primary motor cortex and the cerebellum have a hard time communicating. That's why these people, they shake, and their movements are very, very herky-jerky. They have that shuffling gait, right? And they shake. That rhymes. Shake and the shuffling gait. Kind of rhymes. Tell me you're with me. All right. So the initiation of movement occurs in the primary motor cortex. You got me? You better write this down too. Better not pout. Where is it? Here it is. Watch. White matter in the brain and spinal cord are the axons that make up the white matter are myelinated.
Hold on.
I said that right.
Brain, spinal cord.
In the brain and spinal cord, white matter is made up of myelinated axons. What do axons do? They transmit neural information. So, as you can see right here, are you looking? I'm drawing right here. The lateral aspects of the spinal cord contain motor neurons, axons that are myelinated. Yeah or no?
Lateral aspects.
The outer portions of the spinal cord contain myelinated axon nerve fibers. That's why they're white. Yeah or no? And motor neurons cause movement. Say yeah.
Wait, so the myelinated axons are the neurons? Are the motor neurons?
The myelinated axons make up the white matter of the motor neurons. How many people are following this? You're not following this? What ain't you following? Guys?
I just can't run as fast as you're talking. I'm still trying to.
I'm trying to record this.
I know.
I'm not even touching my computer so it works. Doing the best I can, look. Are you with me? All right. So you learned this in general. You had to. You had a class for 15 weeks. You had to learn something. How many people learned something in general?
Yep. Whole bunch of
A lot.
somethings.
Yeah, well.
Just not much in ascension.
This is like blasphemous.
Can I tell you, look, if I had all the time in the world, then you guys would be wonderful. And I don't. So you pick your poison. Okay, watch. This is an axon. This little thing that looks like a orange hot dog bun with a blue hot dog and a squish of little mustard, that's the myelin sheath. You got me? The myelin sheath is a fatty layer of insulation. Fat does not conduct electricity. Tell me you got that. So, but there are bare spots between the myelin sheath in the axon. Those bare spots are called nodes of Ranvier. You remember this, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so watch. And now you're going to remember this. Except I'm getting old. Okay, watch. I want to get from here to there. Here to there. Right? Would it make sense to do this?
No.
Or would it make more sense to...
Depends how you feel.
True. That hurt. I think I jacked up my knee. So watch. The body does stuff that makes sense. So motor nerves. If somebody's trying to kill you, do you want it to take a huge delay for that impulse to travel from your primary motor cortex down to your muscle so that you start running? No. So when the primary motor cortex is stimulated, it's going to produce an electrical impulse at the cell body and then each node of Ranvier. So instead of the electrical impulse traveling down the entire axon, the electrical impulse is only produced at the bare spots, the nodes. So that increases the speed of electrical conduction by a factor of 1,000. So myelinated nerves produce electrical impulses much faster. Again, a beautiful example of the body doing stuff that makes sense. Say yes. Do you have myelinated fibers, myelinated axons in your spinal cord and brain? Good. You sound like you said that and you're like, I just want to go to bed right now. I'll agree with anything you say. Right? You're like, I don't blame you. I don't know how you guys work third shift and then come to class. You know what I'd be doing for 15 weeks? Throwing up. Don't you feel nauseated? All right, anyways. Write this down. Because you learn this in general. You have... Ugh. What do you mean, no? I went over it. It was a Tuesday. Well, whatever. I went over on a Tuesday. Okay, watch. In the brain and spinal cord, the myelin sheath, that little fatty insulator, right, is produced by cells called oligodendrocytes.
Second letter.
L or OLI, oligodendrocytes. Tell me you got that. Okay, watch. Is the myelin sheath good for you? Yeah, you want it, darn it. But there's a condition where your immune system didn't get the message that your myelin sheath in your brain and spinal cord are good for you. And your T cells and B cells attack this and destroy the myelin sheath. And they produce scar tissue. And scar tissue has a lot of calcium in it, bless you. I did two things at once. I blessed Emma and I wrote calcium. Watch. Is calcium hard?
Yes.
What's the medical term for hard?
Oh my Lord.
Mind in the gutter.
No.
It's called sclerosis. So people who have an autoimmune condition where their myelin sheath within their brain and spinal cord are attacked and replaced with scar tissue which has calcium, and that's called sclerosis. They have a condition called multiple sclerosis. Do you see how I brought that to you?
Yeah.
And they're in motor nerves, right? So in people with MS, what type of symptoms are they going to present with? They get dizzy, they can't control their muscle movements. Sometimes they'll be walking and just like completely collapse, right? That is multiple sclerosis. Now there's varying degrees of multiple sclerosis. Some people from the time they're diagnosed until the time they're taking a 6-foot dirt nap, it can be just a few years. Other People, they can go through an entire lifetime having minimal symptoms. I played baseball with a guy. This guy was good too. And he's running around first base. He hit a double, right? And he's running the second. He just collapses. He gets up and then, goes to second base. I'm like, dude, what happened? He goes, Tim, my legs just collapsed. Well, that ain't right. And then I went up to bat. But I told him, I said, you need to have that checked out. So he went to his doctor and they did an MRI. The MRI is the only way to diagnose multiple sclerosis. And they will actually see the scar tissue on the brain and spinal cord. And he was dead within about 3 years.
Whoa.
Yep. He was like 27 years old. Yeah, that's awful. It is. Tell me you followed this. Okay, so you're going to get this. I know. If you figured out the blood gas, you're totally going to get this. All right, so watch. What produces the electrical activity in the body? That's very good. Now watch. This little fatty insulation, this myelin sheath, it insulates you. It can't produce or spread an electrical impulse. Are you with me? So would it make sense to have ion channels embedded in the membrane of the axon and then wrap it in fat? Would that make sense? No. So where is the only place on the axon? Right, you didn't even let me finish the question. The only place on the axon where you have those ion channels is at the nodes of Ranvier. Say yes. So think of the nodes as like dominoes that don't touch one another. When one domino is here and the other one's here, when this falls, it will cause this one to fall. Say yes. That's how it speeds that electrical conduction. All right, take a break. And then when you come back, I'm going to explain to you number 14.
That was the intro.
That was the intro to number 14.
That's the intro to number 14.
We should have already known.
Right, you should have known that.
So now we're going to go into how sodium
And chloride.
Yeah.
And potassium.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm going to explain to you why you get the symptoms you do with high and low potassium and high and low calcium.
Yay, that
Yeah, I
sounds
bet you can't wait. I bet you can't wait. Yeah, you guys are on the edges of your seat, aren't you? Yeah. Hooray. Yes, ma'am.
The notes of Ranvier.
Ranvier. Right here. I know it looks like Ranvier. Ranvier.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I did. I think I got yours. I know I do. There you are. I need that multiple guess back when you're done, okay?
You said that we were picking times for the final on Thursday.
Yes.
So is it oral like the midterm was?
Yep. Do you wanna take a multiple guess final?
I prefer like this written.
It's either multiple guess or oral.
Oh, you can pick?
If you want to take a multiple guess, you can.
Yeah, I'll take that.
You're sure? You're sure?
Yeah.
The multiple guess, it's out of the book mostly.
Okay.
You're okay with that?
Is it still going to be based on like the questions?
Yeah, it'll be based on respiratory, kidney, whatever we cover, and you're gonna have to look at the chapters of the stuff that we cover, or just look in the syllabus as to what is going to be covered.
Okay.
Can I give you a little bit of a preview? People who take the multiple guess final, they typically don't do that well.
Okay, how is the oral one going? We just picked the 3 questions?
What's that?
The oral one, we just picked the 3 questions?
We picked 3 questions. I'm just saying, I'll give you that as an option, but people typically don't do well. It's challenging. You can still take it. It's up to you. I'm not trying to dissuade you. All I'm telling you is that in past years, people don't do that well. And it's generated from the book, so it's going to use terms that are from the book.
Okay.
Just let me know. Give me let me know on Tuesday what you want to do.
So is the final the 17th?
The final's the 17th.
Where did you post the answers for these multiple choice?
Right up here. Here. Oh, here it is. Definitely made that back.